Hello and welcome to this beginner's guide on Photoshop. In this course, we're going to be explaining the toolbar in Photoshop. First thing I need to do is to create a new canvas, and I can do this by heading to File, New, and I'll give my canvas a name. So let's call this New. Then I could select my document type depending on the size of paper that I would want. Select on international paper and then head to select on A4. I will change this to pixels. My resolution, I will leave my resolution at 300, and also the color mode, leave it at RGB, which is meant for screen, and hit on OK. Next, I need to head to File, Place Embedded to bring in an image. So I'll head to my desktop and select on this image and place. So I'll hit on this check mark to apply my transform. First tool is the Move tool, and basically the Move tool is meant to move images or text around on the canvas. Next is the Rectangular Marquee tool. So I will head to create a new layer, and the Rectangular Marquee tool is used to make rectangular selections, just like this. So what I just did is to click and to drag, left click on the mouse and drag, head to Edit, Fill, and select Color, and make a selection of yellow, and then I'll click on OK. To deselect these marching ants, I'll head to Select and Deselect. Next thing I could do is to change the blend mode to have this special effect, just like that. So I would delete this layer 1 and move to the next tool, which is the Lasso tool. The Lasso tool is more like a freehand selection tool, and we're going to use this to make a selection of this waist ribbon, just something like this. Because this is a freehand selection tool, I don't have to be really exact. So what I'm just doing is I'll left click on the mouse and hold the mouse and drag it around to make a selection of any particular image of my choice, and when I'm done, I'll let go of the mouse. Now I could do several things to this. I could head to Edit. First of all, create a new layer, head to Edit, Fill, and change the color to a different color entirely, and say OK, head on OK. Head to Select and also Deselect. You can also change the blend mode to something interesting like this. Okay, so it changes back to color, and you have this effect. The next tool is the Quick Selection tool. Now, from the name, Quick Selection tool is basically meant to make a quick selection of subjects from background. So let's say, for instance, we need to subtract this little girl's image from the entire picture. So I would right click here to rasterize this first, and then use the Quick Selection tool. Just left click and paint around the region of the subject to make a selection. Just a very quick selection. Just a quick selection. So I need to take down the size of my brush. I'll head to this panel over here and then take down the size of my brush to something very small, like this, so I could go in and brush this unnecessary part off. So to brush this unnecessary part off, I need to hold on the Alt key and just click and drag, and then my selection becomes like this. Next thing I need to do is to head to Refine Edge. And on this Refine Edge, I would want to use the brush, increase the size of the brush a little bit more, something like this, and then I'll start to paint around the region of the outline of our body, something like this. So now I'll head to Shift Edge, or move the Shift Edge to this point, and also increase the contrast a little bit more so that the edges will be more sharper. Then I'll continue painting around the region of her face, just to bring back some of the lost detail. So I'll just paint quickly, and sometimes you need to take your time to do this depending on the kind of selection or depending on how good your selection was. So I'll just quickly do this. I'll also increase the contrast a little bit more. I think it's becoming too hard. Take this down a little bit. Also the shift edge, just push it to the left a little bit. Now this is quite okay. The outfit method, I would select layer with a mask and hit on OK. So basically we've subtracted the subject from the background. So that's the basic function of the quick selection tool. The next tool is the crop tool, and basically the crop tool is meant to crop my canvas or meant to resize my canvas. So I'll just crop this to focus on just the image that I have, something like this, and then I'll apply this to commit the transform, and basically we'll resize the canvas. So I'll hit Ctrl Z to go back one step. The next tool is the brush tool. The brush tool basically would allow me to make painting on my image. So I selected on the brush tool, and then the hardness of the brush, I'll take it down to 0, and also the size of the brush depending on how big I want the brush to be like. And I would select a foreground color. So let's select something in the region of yellow, a deeper shade of yellow this time, and hit on OK. Increase the size of my brush using the left or the right bracket key on my keyboard. Left is going to decrease the size of the brush, and right is going to increase the size of the brush. So I will create a new layer for the effect I want to apply, and just paint. Just click on the brush once. Then I could also decrease the opacity of the brush, something like this. I could also change the blend mode depending on what I'm doing. So basically this is the function of the brush tool. The next tool that you have is the eraser tool. Now basically the eraser tool is meant to delete pixels. So before we delete these pixels, I would want to increase this image to fit my canvas by hitting on Ctrl T. Select on the layer where the image is and hit on Ctrl T. Right? So I will hold on the Shift and the Alt key to resize my image. But before I will do that, I will right click on my image, apply this, click that to apply transform, right click on the image and convert it to a smart object, because we don't want to lose pixels while we're stretching the image. So I'll hit on Ctrl T, Shift and Alt key, and then resize my image to fit my canvas. So I'll just do that quickly, something like this, and apply to commit my transform. So the eraser tool is going to allow me to erase my part of the image, or to delete the background, kind of. So what I'll do is I'll right click to rasterize this layer, and then increase the size of my eraser, and then I'll just quickly erase. Now this is like a more permanent treatment, you know, because any part I erase and I save this document and I need to come back to it to edit it, it's not going to be possible because I already deleted some of the pixels around my image. The next tool that you have is the gradient tool. So I'll just hit on Alt and Ctrl Z to undo multiple steps backward. The gradient tool is basically meant to add gradients to my subject or to my image. So to apply the gradient tool, I will create a new layer for the gradient, and then select on my type of gradient. You have several types of gradients here, so let's use this and say OK. What I'd want to do is to I can also specify my type of gradient from linear to radial to the rest of them that you have there. So I'll just left click and drag my mouse to apply my gradient. Then I will head to change the blend mode. I could also select on overlay, or select on, I think I prefer color more. I could also decrease the opacity if I want to, and I have my image like this. The next tool that you have is the pen tool. So for the pen tool, I'm going to create a new layer. I'll hide this. So the pen tool is basically meant to create shapes. So what I'll do is to select on the pen tool, the fill color. I would want to turn off the fill, the stroke black, and also the thickness of my stroke color of my stroke. I'll leave it to something very minimal, and then I'll draw my shape. So depending on the kind of shape I want to draw, I will just click and drag to create my shape like this. Now, I don't have any shape in mind, but I'm just trying to show us the function of the pen tool. Now once I'm done, I could change my fill color. I also take away the stroke. Just arrange this back here, and I have this interesting shape. So the pen tool can be used to create basic backgrounds for my ID cards, my flyers, and things like that. So it's a freehand tool actually that you can use to create custom shapes. The type tool is going to afford me the opportunity to type. So I could select my type of font, say something like this, and then select a font size, and left click once on the canvas and type. I'll say the man, and then I'll apply this to commit my change. Use the move tool and move my text to anywhere I want. So that's the basic function of the type tool. The next tool is your direct selection tool. So before we would explain the direct selection tool, I would create a shape using the rectangle tool. So the direct selection tool is going to allow me to distort my shape depending on the anchor points that I selected. So let's say for instance I need to distort this shape from this point. I could just select on this point here, click once, and drag it to create my custom shape. So that is the function of the direct selection tool. The direct selection tool will focus on mainly anchor points. Okay. So the next is the hand tool. The basic function of the hand tool is just to move my canvas around. The zoom tool will allow me to zoom in. If I hold the Alt key, I will zoom out. You have the foreground color and also the background color. So let's say we created a new layer. I'll hide all these other layers, and then I need to fill this layer with a color. I will simply head to my foreground color, select the color scheme of my choice, okay, and then I'll hit on the Alt and backspace to fill my canvas. So that is the basic function of all these tools in Photoshop. In the next tutorial, we're going to explain some of the tools that I skipped, and basically they are the retouching tools in Photoshop, how we can use those retouching tools to retouch our images in Photoshop.